All right, let's talk about how to run faster. So, as I said before, I spent my whole beginning of my career, I don't know, 10 years trying to figure out how to run faster. Today, we're going to answer that question. We're going to start off by just looking through the energy systems. All of us have been in races before where you start off, you feel good, you're with the leaders, and then something happens where you can't keep up anymore. You die. A hill comes. You start breathing really hard. It's happened to all of us. Why can't we keep up with the fastest people in races? So I want to go through the energy systems and then I'll explain the holy grail of how to keep up, how to be fast, how to be a champion. So there's three ways that your body creates energy. One's called ATP. Now that's not really important for us. That's for powerlifting, for sprinting, for jumping. Those are for actions that require explosive exercises. It's the last 10 seconds, 3 seconds, 10 seconds or less. It's very, very short, explosive things. Not that that's completely unimportant. It has some value in distance running, but it's very minimal for what we're talking about today. That leaves us with the two other energy systems, aerobic and anaerobic. So aerobic is low intensity efforts. It's basically everything you do in your life is aerobic. Okay, so you are moving, you are providing energy using oxygen. That's what it is, with oxygen. You can continue to do aerobic activity until you've completely exhausted your fuel reserves. Obviously, that's what you eat, your carbohydrates. Now, even after you've depleted all your carbohydrates, you can continue to function aerobically, but now your body starts to metabolize body fat and even muscle tissue. And just a word of note, I just read a study that says you actually, once you've burned through all your fuel, all your carbohydrates, you actually burn muscle and body fat at the same time. So if you're going into workouts and you've already depleted all your carbohydrates, specifically people who are anorexic, they're not just burning fat on their body, they're also burning muscle tissue, even while they still have body fat. So just be aware of that. Aerobic is very efficient. It's something that can be done essentially indefinitely as long as you keep eating, and it can be improved more or less infinitely. You can continue to get better at aerobic metabolism as long as you keep training the aerobic system. Okay, and a good example of this is ultra runners. You see ultra runners that go out. This is 100-mile race. Okay, 100 miles. Humans, lots of them, can go out and race 50, 100 miles. They can run. This guy won the Western States in 14 hours, but it's not unheard of to hear people running 26, 27, 30 hours straight. And the reason they're able to do this is two things. One, they've trained their aerobic system. Okay, remember, you can improve it indefinitely. There is one limiting factor. And two, as long as they keep fuel, you see these people eating bananas and energy bars and taking gels and stuff, all while they're running, you can keep going essentially, not quite forever, but seems like forever. So there's the aerobic. Now, the other part is anaerobic. What if I want to do something that's really, really fast? High intensity efforts that are longer than 10 seconds. Well, now we start to metabolize anaerobically. So we can continue to go without oxygen, but the maximum duration of these high intensity efforts is about 2 minutes. It's very inefficient, but you can run very fast doing this. Okay? But you can't keep it up for very long because when you metabolize anaerobically, your body has to clear. There's this product called lactate that starts to accumulate. It's basically a waste product from creating energy without oxygen. It starts to accumulate in your muscles, and your body has to clear this. Eventually, by the time 2 minutes comes, your body can no longer clear the lactate, and you have to slow down and you go back to aerobic. You can improve your anaerobic capacity, your VO2 max, by running longer intervals at race pace or shorter intervals with short recoveries at race pace or faster. However, there is a limit to how much you can improve your anaerobic metabolism. As I show you here, these are VO2 max values for certain athletes. The highest ones have ever been recorded have been by cross-country skiers all the way up to 95. You can see some of the other ones: runners, rowers, cyclists, swimmers, soccer players, or was that volleyball? I don't know. But you can see what their VO2 max values are. So there's actually a limit of how efficient you can be at clearing lactate from your blood. This you can improve unlimited. This has a limit. Okay, now they're both important in distance running, but now I want to talk about what ultimately is the best way to get better. Is it training aerobically or anaerobically, or what combination? So I want to talk about what is known as the lactate threshold. Now, the lactate threshold is this place in training that kind of borders aerobic and anaerobic, and that is the sweet spot of training. So if you can train right up to where before you start to you go anaerobic, that is the ultimate best place to train if you're trying to improve your lactic threshold, be a better distance runner. So as you kind of read here, it says this is the line between aerobic and anaerobic training. This threshold is different in everyone and can be improved, meaning you can run faster and still stay aerobic, because that's essentially the key. If I can run fast, if I watched Nico Young last night try to run 4:20 pace for 12 and a half laps. He failed, but he was able to stay mostly aerobic, high aerobic for 8 laps. He was running 4:20 pace for 8 laps. Now, for me and many of us, that would be way, way anaerobic. But he is so efficient now that he can handle 65-second laps and still stay aerobic. Now, he didn't stay aerobic. He ended up going anaerobic and died the last mile. Okay? But that's the idea. If you improve your lactic threshold, you can maintain a faster pace for longer periods of time before you crash into anaerobic, which can only be maintained for 2 minutes. Okay, that you figure like the last 800 of a race, you want to be going anaerobic, but everything else has to be aerobic. So this is really what we want to try to improve. We want to try to improve our lactate threshold, or LT. If you can do that, then you're going to be a faster runner. So the question is, how do we do that? Well, the answer is you simply have to run more at your lactic threshold without going anaerobic, because if you make an error and you go too fast and you run anaerobic, you don't improve your lactic threshold. You still get some benefit, but you don't improve. And here's the other thing. If you run too slow, you don't run at your threshold, you're simply working your aerobic system and you're not improving your lactic threshold. So you've actually got to figure out the exact range, the pace to run that is lactic threshold. And by the way, it changes. As you get in better shape, your lactic threshold should be improving. So you have to constantly understand what is lactic threshold pace. So I just wrote down some workouts: steady states, track tempos, cruise intervals, progression runs, medium paced runs, mountain running, critical velocity runs, marathon. They're all lactic threshold. They're all designed for you to run at your lactic threshold. Okay, that's what all those workouts are. Now, some of them may look like intervals, but they're just slower intervals. Some of them may just look like, oh, we ran fast today. You're running at your lactic threshold. If we go and run the Beast this Saturday, you're not going to be able to run 5 miles uphill anaerobically. Essentially, what's going to happen for anyone that's run mountains before is you're going to fall into your lactic threshold, because running uphill is just simply harder, but you're not exactly going anaerobically, so you end up falling in to your threshold pace by running mountain runs. That's why they're really important. Now, again, how do you figure all this out? Well, if you were a pro, like the Ingebrigtsen brothers, they actually have a device called a blood lactate meter, where during workouts they prick their finger and they measure the lactate in their blood while they're doing workouts to make sure they're not accumulating lactate. If you're like Paragus, I bought a heart rate monitor, and I actually look at my heart rate and to see if I was at my threshold or not after I run. LT pace is 90% of your maximum heart rate. Another way you can do it is you can just simply estimate. You can figure out what your best 5K time is and simply run 25 to 30 seconds slower per mile than your race pace. Okay, and that's another way to figure out what your threshold pace is. And then, of course, the easiest way is just to listen to your respiration, listen to your breathing. If you start huffing and puffing during a run, you've gone anaerobically. You don't want to do that when you're trying to improve your threshold. So it's really learning how to run fast and relaxed. You want to run the fastest pace as relaxed as possible so that you don't go anaerobic. And spending more time running at that pace is ultimately what's going to make you a faster distance runner.